preparing to live stream the meeting. It's loading and we're on, I think. Yes. As soon as they turn their cameras on, I will spotlight them as well.
Okay, greetings to those of you who are entering today. We're going to kind of hold up just for a minute or two to see who else may join us. We're glad to have you with us today after such a powerful sermon by Jeramogi on our story, Black history. I'm sure you'll be full and ready to go. But in the meantime, let me just share this with you. So Neil, y'all know how is this flyer showing up?
It looks good.
Okay.
Looks real good. Glad to see that we have Reverend JB with us and the Barudis are joining.
Kay Fing is here too.
Hey, man.
Yes, Kay Fing, I would love to spotlight you, but I can't do it with your camera off.
No problem.
So can you tell us about this leaflet?
Yes, I was just about to. We are very excited at the Cultural Center in Atlanta. Sister Amanika has approved this African history class through our Cultural Center. And I want you to keep her in your prayers. She right now should be on her way to South Africa to a networking meeting. Okay. Just want to say on behalf of the Cultural Center in Atlanta that we are very excited about reestablishing our history class and making it a virtual presentation that will start next Saturday and will continue every Saturday from 1:30 to 3:30. I'm very privileged to be a lead facilitator, but from time to time, of course, we will have other master teachers to join in this process. It will open us up to an international audience, and so we're very excited about that. Okay, now that we have a host of master teachers that have joined us this morning, we definitely want to open up the opportunity for you to have some comments on a very powerful sermon this morning from Jaramogi Kimathi on Black history, the history of Black history, the relevance of Black history, the necessity of Black history, the threat that is going on nationwide to Black history. So who would like to be first to kind of just jump in and make some general comments as we move forward?
Well, good morning or afternoon, everyone. I bring you greetings from the Big Apple. They never gave us a bite, but we still fighting for that.
All right.
But my wife and I, Kamara and I, we always appreciate when Jaramogi Kimathi presents, particularly on the depths of history. And I think the way he laid it out, too often our history by many historians starts with enslavement. And then we go from enslavement to the present, and we don't speak about our greatness prior to slavery. And for him to see how they erased, the Egyptians or the Kemet folks erased the Blackness from there, erased it from the Babylonians and erased all of that. And then now come trying to erase it today, trying to say that it doesn't exist today, or at least they don't want to deal with it today. So I thought it was a great piece. As always, he puts forth that, and the importance of our history is our memory. And, once you forget, that was a powerful statement, because if you forget who you are, then people could define you for you and let the world know who you are. So I think that this is an important moment in our time. As Steve Biko said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And there's nothing more greater than changing the mind of our people than letting them know, who we are. And I'm really fascinated with linguistics, social and psycho linguistics. And I was doing research. Matter of fact, we had a whole movement on the so-called Ebonics movement. Remember, the sisters from Oakland said that we need to use Ebonics as a bridge to teach standard English. They weren't saying that, teach our children's Ebonics, but as a bridge to teach the mastery of standard English, so that they wouldn't think that the way they're speaking is bad English. They were speaking a different language, even though the vocabulary is English, they were speaking a different language. And I like at that time, Brother Malefe Asante, myself, Reverend Daughtry, and Dr. Adelaide Sanford, and in New York, we went around just to say, hey, you're not speaking bad English, you're speaking differently. And it's the same parallel as Brother Kimathi was putting forward. We're speaking differently. So when you know that your original language was from Africa, and when we were stolen, brought here, they didn't teach us standard English and nothing like that. They just said, change your African vocabulary. But the syntax, the phonics, all of the pieces of language was still African. This is why we say, where your mother at? We put that on the end because that's consistent with African language systems. What your name be? What your name be? And, you know, we don't say we taking tests. We take tests because the double consonant, the second one is silent in African linguistics. So when we say this and that, it's because the TH sound in many African languages has a DA sound. So that's why we say this and that. You know, we didn't just make that up. You know, and if the TH sound is at the end of a word, it has the F sound in African language. Like both of us are going down south after we brush our teeth. So that's not like bad English. And I'm not telling people to go look for a job. And when you're in the interview saying, well, both of us came together, no, you won't get the gig. But don't think that their English is superior speech to you. You know, they're English. Someone told me I was the head of the higher ed committee in city council, and the New York Post, they hate me. They did a whole story. The head of the council, higher ed, does a double negative. Because I said, you know, someone ain't got no, right? So they said, well, Mr. Brown, what's your response? And I said, the Post ain't got no credibility nowhere. Now write a triple negative. That's how much I care what you think about. But I just liked the message today. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's very interesting that a people who were the last to speak a language would criticize the originators of language. That's very interesting. And you don't give it a second thought if you know your history.
Right.
That's very interesting. As social scientists, and that's what we are those who take on the mantle of providing leadership for our people. The question about people without history, because within social science concept, every people have a history. So can you speak on this whole idea of the problems of a people who do not have a history? Anybody?
Well, I'll comment. Just kind of piggyback on what Brother Shamari was saying. Also, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. We also need to take into account that we learned English from some of the most ignorant white people in the country. So, you know, their language was jacked up. So that's who we learned this so-called English language that we're speaking. But the point that Jerry Moji was talking about, I thought was a great point about when he talked about the man who was found behind the store, and he didn't know he didn't know who he was, and basically, you know, that's basically what happened to us with that cultural amnesia, and how our history was erased and destroyed. You know, Napoleon shooting the nose off of the Sphinx, and then when you look at a lot of those monuments and stuff in Egypt now, you can see how they've been doctored up. They, you know, changed the noses on a lot of those monuments and made them and Europeanized them, and you know, came up with this whole concept of Middle East. And Black folks need to stop saying Middle East. Show me what the Middle East is. And they're gonna show you. They're gonna show you North Africa. That's Africa. Show me where the Middle East is. So, you know, the Arabs and white folks and stole Egypt from us, and the white Jews and then stole Israel from us. I know I'm going kind of going off track here, but my point is getting back to the story about the man who didn't know who he was. He had lost his memory. That's basically what has happened to us, and that's basically why, you know, we wonder why we're so ignorant about who we are, we'll kill each other, shoot each other, because we have no connection. That connection to our motherland has been severed. And it's our duty here as Black Christian nationalists and the conscious community to make sure we make that reconnect to our history that goes all the way back to the Olduvai Gorge. Not just, it doesn't start with slavery. And you know, our children, all of them need to know that, like those Chinese children Jeremy Moji was talking about, and those Jewish children, they learn about their history. And I'm glad you are bringing that up, that Black History course back again, Walamo. We need to make sure that these colonizers can't continue to erase our history. We have to teach our children our history, our history.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It surely is a bit, no, not a bit, a lot of insanity for people to criticize the first people as having no history. It's just totally absurd. But if you are ignorant of our story, then you might even entertain such a crazy idea. I'm reminded of a story that was told about ancient Sumer. And as Jaramogi pointed out, we should definitely know that the ancient Sumerians were African people. And the story goes that a young boy was talking to an elder in the community, where we still understood the value of learning from elders. And he came up to the elder and he said, I heard about the ancient Sumerians, that they were a great people. They were mathematicians, they were astronomers, that they did a lot of great things. Can you tell me more about them? And the elder looked up to him and said, all of what you heard is true. And so the young boy said, well, why don't we all know more about them today? And the elder looked up at him kind of saddened and said, well, they lost their history, and so they died. They lost their history, and so they died. Jaramogi talked about how history connects us to a common past. And in every social culture, and of course, we are the first people on the planet, that has been thoroughly documented, that humanity comes out of Africa, that African Eve is the mother, the African woman is the mother of all people who live on the planet today, simply by DNA connections. And the Black man is therefore the father of humanity, based on modern DNA analysis. And that every people then produce a story of their past, which becomes history. It's a story of past accomplishment. Values are transmitted from one generation to the other through a natural process of telling the stories of that particular community. So it is totally absurd that a people would have no history. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what is going on here? And if we don't understand that, we are connected. And that's a major problem for our people, not just in America, but around the planet today, is that we don't see ourselves as belonging to each other. We share common exploitation and a common oppression, but we don't see the common connection because we have lost our history. We've lost culture, and culture is the lifeblood of a people. Right. What we do and how it's specifically related to us as a particular group of people. Therefore, we lose memory and we lose identity. So once we understand that, we ask the question, well, what happened? And then we begin to talk about this process of oppression and cultural assimilation. Can we have some idea about what happens when a people have been dominated by another group of people and their history is taken away from them, and the history or the story of their oppressors is imposed upon them?
It's
Hello?
interesting that you should mention the people of Sumar. We, I often use that in my church and here in New York. Reverend Herbert Daughtry and Sister Karen Daughtry use that a lot. We have the good fortune of being in the city council where we can put up street names. We can co-name streets or rename streets. So we always say, what happened to the ancient people of Samar? Well, they lost their history and they died. So in order for us to remember people that did things in our community, we put up street names after them. So in my battles, they fight against us doing that, especially if it's somebody revolutionary or radical, which is what I always propose. But and if it's someone that just was a community activist and we want to remember them, put the street names up. But if you notice, to show how important history is to them, if you look at our street names, George Washington, Washington Avenue, Jefferson Avenue, most of the streets named in my community are named after slaveholders. So when I put up something and they say, oh, but he was a racist and he said this and she said that, that's what you got murderers. You got people who enslaved people, their names up there, and you worry about Sonny Abubadika Carson, a Black activist. You must be crazy. If Jefferson can be up there, the slaveholding pedophile, then certainly we can put Sonny Carson's name up there. But to show you how important it is to them, we think things are, oh, it's just a name. They fight it tooth and nail to stop you from putting a street sign up. And if you look at any of the symbolic things we do, you can't put a black fist at the American anthem in the '68 Olympics. How many people did that kill? But yet, look what they did to John Collis and Tommy Smith just for that act. When we do simple things to try to change the narrative, they come out incredible. So I'm glad you mentioned the people of Sumar.
Yes, this whole process of imposing the culture of the oppressor on the oppressed is a very deep process. It covers a lot of different cultural aspects, from education to religion to just cultural traditions, where it erases the past of those who have been oppressed. They say that it is the victor who tells the story, and those who have been oppressed and exploited, their whole culture and history is erased through this whole process of cultural domination and assimilation. We need to understand that, because the overwhelming majority, I would say still today, of our people have no understanding of even this process of domination, and just assume by osmosis the culture of the oppressor as normal and right and true. And so it is surely, therefore, important for those of us who are conscious to make sure that we are dealing with these problems related to cultural assimilation, and how it is still, after all this time, very relevant in society today. As Jaramogi talked about, what's going on in Florida is not just something that's just happening in Florida. It is a Republican, it is white domination plan that is being picked up nationwide. In the midst of the reality of the information age, and that's one of the dynamics that we could speak on as well, because the internet and the information age has made available to us, to the blind and the dumb, information that we never would dream of. We remember going to school and looking at books that were passed down from earlier generations of white people, trying to hope that you get the book that wasn't as tore up as some of the other books, but then going through the books and never seeing yourself, and going through an educational process where you never saw yourself. You're always taught about somebody else. All of this is a part of that that cultural assimilation that is now being used even more so dynamically with mass media. Can we speak on how mass media is infecting the minds of our people today?
I hate to dominate this conversation, but this stuff excites me. So if somebody else wants to say something, I'll stop. But since you didn't, too late.
Yeah, this is Kwame.
Go ahead. Oh.
Yeah, this is Kwame. I've been trying to get on, so I just called. But yeah, we've been totally put out of the system. We're really, I would say, just getting back in the system in terms of politics, you know. But you know, we're ignored in all kind of ways, and it's a continuous process. And even Martin Luther King said that the ultimate logic of this process was genocide. He knew that. So I mean, that's nothing new. It's just we're really the only ones that really actually started building independent power based upon the church, and all we have to do is continue.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great point, Kwame. Not to cut you off, but there was a point in there where Jim Moses was talking about how Dr. Carter G. Woodson he mentioned, you know, when you can diminish a people to animalize them and equate them with animals, that it's okay to murder, rob, steal, kill them because they're not worthy of anything. And then when they come back and ask for reparations, that's like a horse or a cow coming back and asking for reparations for being killed and murdered for years in their minds.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point that we need to emphasize, how that whole you know, piece that Hitler, that the Germans did, and well, they did it in Africa too, but they studied these colonizers over here. That's where they got those ideas from. And we're running around, you know, partying, going to Grammys, and arguing about who's the GOAT in basketball, and riding around our big cars and big houses. Not that, and I'm sure a lot of them Jews was doing the same thing when they thought Hitler wasn't going to come get them, and he did. And if we're not careful, if we can't multiply, you know, people who tune in to our services and like-minded people around the country and around throughout the African diaspora who are conscious and who are trying to push this message, if we don't wake up as a people, we're gonna drown.
Yeah, you know,
we're gonna drown in that sunken place. So we have to multiply.
You know, Jeremy talked about reconnecting in our disconnection from God. You know, we have to be careful with Black folks. I was talking to a sister, and she just over the phone on the radio, and she would just hang up on me, and I wasn't saying anything insulting, you know, but I got her to the point where she said, well, she's gonna have to rethink Jesus, God, and Christianity. But we're disconnected from God, and you know, the church is our reconnection to God. And that's what the basis that we build power on.
Right. You know, you mentioned the mass media.
Yes.
And here's something that's a little trickier than the obvious with the Santos and them are doing. The Black Panther movies and the Amistad, those two pictures. Now, if you really check the pictures out, first of all, the Black Panther movie is not a Black movie. It is by Disney and Perlmutter, who was Marvel. And Perlmutter made billions off this movie, and he was a strong supporter of Donald Trump. But if you look, you know, we're saying instead of Black power, the real Black power, now we're saying Wakanda. You know, Wakanda, some fictional power that doesn't exist. And even if you check out the movie itself, they did a good job. They gave you a lot of African culture and African aesthetics and beautiful people. Some of the most beautiful African people you ever want to see, a male and female. But the hero along with them was the CIA guy. Here, the CIA guy, and the one that they made the craziest, Killmonger, whatever his name is, he was the closest to a revolutionary. He wanted the vibranium for all of us and stop the colonialism. And T'Challa, the Black Panther, he wanted it just for, Wakanda, nobody else. So here he was like, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. He was the hero. And the CIA, who murdered our leaders, who murdered Black Panthers, who murdered Lumumba, this guy was going to die, and they saved him. And then at the end, when T'Challa said to Killmonger, why don't we get together? And he said, before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried and I'd be going out of here. Now, that's interesting how that whole thing played out. And I'm going to speak in an elementary school next week. And the teacher there has them all set up in their Black Panther. I used to be in the party in the 60s. And we're going to say, hey, this generation, when you say Black Panther, they're not going to think of Huey P. Newton or Bobby Seale or Panthers who fed them breakfast and gave them free health programs. They're going to think of Wakanda. So, and even some of these, when I first ran, and I said, I'm not going to say I wasn't in the I'm not going to not mention my Black Panther experience. All these Black elected officials were scared of it. But when the Black Panther movie came out, they all saying, Wakanda, Charles, Wakanda. I said, no, I do one fist, the real Black power, no fictional stuff. The other one was the Amistad. Remember that picture?
Oh,
now,
yeah.
They liked the Amistad. There were over 50 mutinies. Some of the mutinies, the boats never got to America. They turned them around. And there was a few mutinies where they killed all of the white crew, took over the ship, unlike the Amistad that left two of the white crew members alive, and they misguided them to Long Island. And who's the hero? Quincy Adams, the white, sixth president, was the hero in court and got them freed, and they can go back because the white man freed them. Just like Mississippi burning. Remember that picture?
Yep.
How do you have the movement of Martin Luther King, civil rights, did all that stuff, and they're going to show these two white guys, Defoe and the other guy that's supposed to be helping the movement find the civil rights people? That is more malicious than some of the more obvious stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Which brings us back to the question of who's telling the story about us. And more times than not, it is our enemy who is telling our story. And of course, that's something that will not do for your oppressor to tell you who you are. And at this point, we have bought into a certain naivete that every morning we dress up our beautiful little treasures, put a little Vaseline on the face, and send them to an educational process that is totally controlled by our oppressors. And we hope that they will come out of there with some sense of who they really are as a people. And then when they come out, they put on earphones, and you don't know what they're listening to, but you can almost bet that it is not anything positive and constructive from an Afrocentric cultural perspective. And then when they get in the house, they turn on the media devices there, whether it's the computer for the internet or the television, and they're getting dosed again with more misconceptions about who they are. And all of this is being taken into their minds, and we wonder why we're having a problem. Who's telling our story? And even when we provide the critique that we understand, why are we not like the Jews that Jaramogi was talking about, taking over some process of control of our own story? One of the things that I've been continually pushing for us is that we need multimedia resource centers in every region. Since we cannot control the educational process in this country, and many people will devote a lot of time and energy trying to transform the public school system. Many people will critique the media in trying to transform white media, but I would think that our efforts would be better suited in developing our own media processes and using it as a means to answer this question: how do we teach our story in the midst of our enemy? Anyone? How do we teach our story?
I think that the thing,
I still gotta use the phone. But I'm having trouble with my computer. You know what?
well, Kwame,
I was talking to some people on the radio about this, and I taught Black history. I'm really the only teacher the board look to teach Black history, because everybody else don't even want to teach it. But once you finish covering a Black history course, what the students understand is that there is a Black history. Now, that's a good beginning, but it doesn't change a lot. It doesn't change what you want to change. So it's not easy, but in terms of just teaching something or how to teach it, I think music is very good. You know, doing something, actually getting them or the students to do certain things or go certain places. It takes a lot of action, not just a lot of reading. Videos and CDs are good too, because it takes them back into an experience. I think the word is experience. You know, I'm talking about just, you're not actually experiencing the movie, but you're seeing the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of thing is important, not just talking. Because really what the students need is an experience, and work is important. For me, I remember when I first came, you know, the emojis talk about all kinds of stuff, and I didn't understand anything that he was saying. But after I started reading and doing what I was doing and taking my assignments, everything started clicking. It's an experience that's important in terms of changing, but this experience is continuous. It doesn't stop.
Brother K. Fing, what do you have to say about that question? How do we teach our children the truth about who they are?
Well, I have to go back to my experience, an experience of probably a lot of us, you know, who came up in the 50s. All of my elementary teachers were Black. They knew all my family. They knew me. They knew my mama. They knew what she could cook. There was a relationship there. And I was listening to Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. He was on, I think, Karen Hunter, one of those Urban View programs. He was talking about how 83% of elementary teachers now are white women. And you know, we wonder why, you know, our kids are being sent to jail and punished and all that kind of stuff. So because, you know, why would white women teach our children to not only compete with their children, but to get in a position where they would actually possibly be over their children? And so we have a school system right now that the people who are in charge of it are people who are defending the myth of white supremacy. So to answer your question, just from my experience, and I thought it was a powerful experience, all of our children, even if we have to homeschool them, do like the Amish people do. The Amish people that, you know, they send in, they have their own schools, and when they get 13, they don't go to high school. They go to work, and their uncle, their mother, father, business. So by the time they graduate, when they're 18, they know how to build a house, they know how to make clothes. Our children will run around, you know, with their pants down, these big fake eyelashes on, but can't do anything. And then if you go to like a Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, all the people in there are Mexicans. People with skills, learn that they're building houses, plumbing, electricity. Our children are running around trying to rap, play basketball, and all that. You know, those things are on the periphery. They may be good, but we need to get back to nation building skills, teaching our children how to actually do something, do some work. They don't know how to work. They don't know who the enemy is, and that's by design. You know, as long as we sending our children to a school that's dominated, even if you got black folk in it, they're still teaching the same thing that the white man tell them to teach. We need to have our own independent school systems nationwide, the way we used to, that we control from the ground up, so we can teach our children their history, who they are, their connection to their God, to their people, and to their community, and to the motherland.
Yes, I agree. And I think we all, if we think about it, there's a battle to be waged to try to teach our children our history in the public school system, especially when there are things on the way that will actually get you fired for teaching Black history. It's not a part of the curriculum. You're outside of the curriculum. We've had teachers within the nation who had to address those same issues, even though they were adamant about, when the doors were closed, pulling out the Black history and getting it in there, but their jobs were always on the line. I like the idea where you come back to homeschooling. So that's where education really starts. How do we teach our children the truth about their history in the home? Are you learning, first of all, about your history as a parent? Is there a library in the home, whether you have 5 books or 20 books? Do your children ever see you read? Do you ever even have that conversation? Sister Ibatayo, will you talk about this?
Yeah, I do. I have all those things. I like to believe in my heart that I provided a African-centered environment for my children as they were growing up. Yeah, I mean, they saw it when they went to school, and they saw it at home. They went to an African-centered school, and their home was African-centered. So yeah, this whole conversation, Jaramogi really went deep to the core. Ooh, he went so deep until it just, ooh, it unraveled some thoughts in my mind that we got a lot of work to do.
Amen.
Now, your question, how do we teach our story? So it brought me back to when Jaramogi said, deliberate identity formation. That's one of the reasons why I ended up teaching preschool. Because, and you may have heard me say this before, Imani Humphrey was the founder of Aisha Shule. And every school year, we would have this awesome orientation where she would guide us through African history and philosophy and theology in terms of how to be an African-centered educator from the very beginning. It was like 101 every school year. She just kept constantly, every school year, impounding this. Now I understand. She was doing it because to solidify the thought in our mind that wherever you teach our children, teach them from an African-centered perspective. Now, how do we teach our own story with all this other chaos coming at us? Well, I thought, and I have spoken to other teachers about formulating a teacher education component where where we would come together and actually discuss on every grade level what concepts and what parts of history we would teach it in the classroom, undercover. How do you teach a child, an African child, to be an African?
Mm.
So deliberately, we would actually come together and share our philosophy of African-centered education with other African-minded folks that really want to impact our children with their history. And then I said to myself, "Ooh, people going to be getting fired? That's interesting." Now, one institution that we do have, and this still seems to be very profound in our community, are our churches, our spiritual homes. So I had the thought, similar to what we were doing with Food Warriors here in Detroit, families would come to us and we would teach their children about gardening. So if you can imagine, if somehow, some way, no matter what denomination, if our spiritual homes, if our leaderships throughout the area could come together and say, look, our children need to know who they are. So at our church, our children or children in our community will be able to come to the house of God and learn about who they are as an African child. We can start from the very beginning. It's kind of like having Sunday school in every church.
Mhm.
This would be
You're muted.
We're missing you. You're
Sister
muted.
Ifatayo, your mute is
Muted.
on.
We don't want to miss nothing.
with our rites of passage
Mhm.
programs that we have at many institutions at our church. When you start very young and you start implementing in the minds of young girls, young brothers, who they are,
Mhm.
that's part of the rite of passage.
Yes.
That's got to be a strong component of any ritual program that professes to be a rite of passage.
Yes.
We've got to be more intentional about it. That's the only way that I'm thinking this. Right now, I may have said to you all that I'm working with my family to have our reunion because we need to connect.
Mhm.
So me and my revolutionary spirit, I'm going to be sharing, and I have shared bits and pieces of history. I try, and they know me, my family knows me. They know that I'm pro-Black, right? So just in kind of getting them to think, not to call it a picnic, to call it a gathering, an outing, having it on Juneteenth, which is a historical moment in our past that we need to really know more about. So yeah, how do we teach it? Be intentional about it. Like Jiramoji said, be deliberate.
Mhm.
We've got to be deliberate.
Mhm.
Amen.
If I might add, Bishop Judas, not to cut you off, but anybody that's going to teach our children, they have to. It should be mandatory that they read The Miseducation of the Negro by Harvey Weinstein.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They shouldn't even be allowed to teach our children if they don't read that book. Otherwise, they're starting out in the wrong direction already.
Yes.
I would just like to add, we have a really a dual thrust, a dual struggle. They say we are 50 million people of African ancestry in America, and those are the only ones that allow them to count us. We may be even more than that.
Mhm.
In my beloved in East New York or in New York City, there are 1.6 million of our children in the education system. So when we did independent schools of Uhuru Sasa Shule by Brother Jitu Ayusu, Baba Jitu, who made his transition, and Shule Mapanduze, we did all of those, and they all would struggle financially because you have to be more tuition oriented, because most of our people have problem paying the tuition, so they're not going to get government funds. But even if we built the institutions that we're capable of building now, it would cover such a small percentage of our people that we have to also struggle, like Sister Kamara, who's been in the education system for 36 years. And when she became a teacher, and her and Baba Jitu, they had the Black educators, they made sure when they were in the classroom teaching thousands of our children that they brought in the right education. And even when we go out campaigning, we meet some of them now, they're adults. And one said to Sister Kamara, he said, "You saved my life." And she said, "How?" "You had me reading the autobiography of Malcolm X." And he said, "That saved my life." So we have to use our Black slate to not just interview candidates that exist and hope that they do the right thing after we endorse them and they get in, but we have to run our own candidates that will then have an impact. See, I'm on one of the education, or used to be on the education committee in New York, so I could fight to get the Amistad curriculum in, or I can fight to get Malefe Asante's book in. He has a book on our history. And that book, I'm fighting to this day to get his book in. And I had a chancellor that was open for that. And this new chancellor is Black, so I'm gonna approach him to see, if he's in it. But my point is that we gotta impact where the majority of our people are. And we can outline how, they get in the white racist curriculum, imperialistic education, but we have to impact it some kind of way, because, we are a ways away from building enough to encompass enough of our people to stop them from falling into the traps of our oppressors.
Right.
Let me just add that we have to remember that as a part of a nation building process, we have to create dual and independent institutions, because we have to come to the understanding that the institutions that are controlled by our oppressors will not liberate the minds or the bodies of our people. We also remember that we are the first educators. We built the first schools. We educated the Greeks. We educated the Romans. We educated humanity, not just people in Africa, but all humanity owe their educational attainment, whether they recognize it or not, to African people. So with that idea in mind, we still have the ability, once we understand we have been miseducated. Once we bring that truth to our people, we can create and maintain the institutions that are essential for our survival, and they will proliferate where necessary. And just like the Greeks and the Romans came to Africa to be educated, you'll find white folks coming to Black independent schools to try to get the truth about education. And as our Queen Master Teacher was saying, that in the home, we start there first. As Black Christian nationalists, you got to understand the impact that you will have on that infant child when that child see you with a book in your hand, reading in the home. We have to understand, in this age of modern technology, we have great resources. We got audio books. Well, you don't even have to read the book. You can sit down and click on the mouse, and the book can be read to you while you're ironing clothes or doing whatever else that you have to do. Think about our grand master teachers who brought us insight that turned our head around at a time when they didn't have the images. All they could bring to us was the word, and we had to envision what they were saying. But now in this world that we live in now, we can document, as our brother mentioned earlier, visually. We can take you into the pyramid.
Come on.
Once we are able to control those social media tools and use them, I remember that Jeramogi Abebe Ajima went to school with Cecil B. DeMille. Back in that day, he understood the power of media to change the minds, to burn new images on the minds of our children. Once they become conscious of who they are as themselves in the house, yes, continue to struggle over those institutions where we do have some influence. We demand in the Black community where we pay taxes that we have some representation of our history and culture in that school system. But we are not going to totally depend on that because we don't control it.
That's
So
right.
we're going to create our independent schools, our rites of passage programs, in addition, not either or, but both and, so that we demand and understand the necessity of taking control of the education of our own children.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We
And I
have a
think
few minutes left, so anybody else that wants to jump in here as we begin to wrap up what Jeramogi Kimathi started off with a very powerful presentation.
that's, I just wanted to add, my daughter is, she's a fourth grade teacher. She's up for a position with Detroit Public Schools. And I was talking to Kaia and I said, you know, give this about 10 years, but let's think deeply about opening up our own school. Now, here's a young woman. She graduated from Howard. She went to, she graduated from Aisha Shule. So she's got a real good, she's a smart little young person. She really is. And she said, Mom, that is deep in my heart. And you know how that made me feel? I felt like, oh, there's hope. So these young people that are out here that were born and raised in an African-centered environment, and you know, they pretty much got a good, strong concept about what needs to happen. They're talking, and we should encourage them, because one of the biggest mistakes that happened here in Detroit with our African-centered schools, we accepted the money. Once we became charter, and you know, by all of these universities, they pretty much just hijacked our curriculum. You know, they really wanted to, you know, dictate what we were teaching our children. And when they discovered that no, we're not changing, they did everything.
You're muted again.
They didn't take it out of our minds. So yeah, Jeramogi did a wonderful, absolutely powerful message, and I am sharing it. I will share it all day. I'm sending it out to, you know, teacher friends I know, because they really need to hear this message. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I
of
think
course,
that
we cannot end this conversation without hearing from two other master teachers, Reverend Judas and Neil Yono.
I think the thing that we're looking at is that the message in terms of history and what we've gone through as a people, the motivation that it takes to get people to put up the consciousness and the effort is a real struggle. And we're involved in a struggle for survival, a struggle for our children, and we have to fight.
Yeah.
You always fight with your body. You have to fight with your mind and fight with our unity. And that's the profound foundation of the Shrine of the Black Madonna: unity, program, and freedom. And as we go through these discussions, a lot of folks are going to rediscover Black Christian nationalism. But throughout the book is this defining. We define our history. We define our faith. And if we are not defined, they're going to define us. And it's a struggle from the womb to the tomb. And when we're struggling to learn how to embrace and that struggle and find joy in it, and learn to support each other on every weak and lean and sign and love each other, that's what the struggle is all about. We're dealing with a real enemy system, and they are crazy. And the only way to fight them is together, because they're going to isolate us, murder you. If you speak out by yourself, you're going to be hurt.
A target.
Strike back and hit hard, and they're not knowing where it came from. But that's the whole chant that we use in the church. Pamoja tutashinda. Together we will thrive. History is the foundation of what we teach our children in the womb. History is in the Bible. The Bible is such a profound Black history document. And it's such a dangerous tool when you use it right. And it terrifies them. The handkerchief head stuff that we got on the plantation moved out, and the correct interpretation put in there is profound. The geographic locations, just the Nile flowing up from the inner womb of Africa out is a lesson children should learn in kindergarten. Chanting, dancing, all those things that overcome, well, it's put in them that they never forget it. But that's all a part of it. Even they're developing a physical education program that goes along with that, because we're equally blessed physically as we are mentally. Your African people encompasses the totality of life. And it has to be everything that we do around the dinner table, in our gatherings, at church, in our political rallies, everything. That's what it takes. And in the end, when everybody leaves, they know not only are we going to win, but it is the will of God that we win. So we're doing God's will. And so I'm going to shut up there now, but I'm telling y'all, BCN is answer.
Amen. Amen. Master Teacher Milionu.
I am complete. Stealing those words from Mother Amal. Thank you.
Well, Shomar, you the bite out the Big Apple, brother. Thank you. You go back, man. You keep bringing it, man. I'm telling you, you got it. K-Ping, Wally Molatucci, congratulations on your course. We're going to tune in here at Beautyland. I'm trying to tell you, this, we got it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you
Our
very much.
victory is inevitable.
I'm very excited about it. It's almost been 3 years since I've had an opportunity to teach a physical class.
I'm unmuted.
But over that time, I've been doing a great deal of research, and through the Cultural Center in Atlanta, as you saw on the flyer, and I'll wrap up with that. I'll leave it up for a minute. We will be doing a class that will be free and open to the public every Saturday from 12:30 to 1:30. And we're going to start, as we always do, with our curriculum at the very beginning. We will entertain theories and ideas around the Big Bang, and we're going to develop a timeline of how everything got started. And we will move from there through the evolution of the planet Earth and life on Earth, and the first hominid in Africa, all the way up to Homo sapiens sapiens. And then we'll document the histories and cultures that came out of Africa and populated the rest of the world. So I'm excited about having the imagery. I mean, you're not going to see me doing a whole lot of lecturing. I'll just be opening the doors, and we're going to put the imagery there so that we can begin to put some new positive, constructive images about who we are as a people on the minds of our children and our elders as well, who do not know the truth about who we are. So share it with as many people as you can, and we're going to provide the basic lesson plan or format so that it can be replicated in as many places as we can. Because I'm very afraid that they're going to be shutting us down in terms of the classrooms and public school systems, and even to a certain degree on the internet. So if we're not creating our own digital library that we can use for ourselves, we're going to miss this opportunity in this information age. So it is very a blessing to each and every one of us to be alive now and be able to use these social media tools to be able to educate our families and our communities and the rest of the world because we've been lied to. And all we have to do now is promote and teach the truth and let the truth tell the story, a great and wonderful, powerful story of African people from a Pan-African perspective. So again, we're very excited about all of you who are the master teachers, being able to access these tools and use these tools that we will be sharing among you to be able to help tell our story. Here's the flyer again. I'm preparing a little 3-minute or so infomercial that goes along with it that highlights what we're doing in the Cultural Center in Atlanta. We're going to be using more of media tools to teach culture. We're moving from the concept of a bookstore culture center to a cultural center that has a bookstore, and to be able to do this. The last thing I want to leave with you again to put on your hearts and minds. In this day and time, we have to have a multimedia center everywhere that we can incorporate one. It includes a computer lab, but it also has the ability to be able to produce video content. It does not have to be a whole building. It could be a one big room, has green screens, cameras, computers, and you won't have to look for the children. They will be there before you get there. And you will have to put them out of there. And we will then allow them to be able to use their God-given creativity to produce all the things that we need to get our message out. Neil Yono.
Thank you all for being here. Walima Olatunji, thank you for moderating. God bless you all. Have a wonderful week. And remember to share today's message.
Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Take care.
I appreciate you all. Thank you.
All right.
Keep
Peace
those
out, everybody.
graphics coming, K-Fing.
Peace.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Take care.
Peace out.
Tell the
Peace.
girls I said hey.
We're
Will
gonna do that
do.
school in Patayo.
Say that again.
We're gonna do that school.
All right. It's coming.
It's coming.
Amen.
Keep playing again.
Hang on there.
Amen.
Amen.
Whole lot of love, y'all.
All right. Peace. See you all soon.
Tayo, I have a digital hard drive I need to share with you, so we have to communicate about that. Thank you, Neil Yono.
Okay,
Brother
hold
Kwame.
on. We're
Appreciate
being
it.
recorded and this is a live stream, so give me just a second. But I thank you. I really appreciate you filling in.